You think making her miss you means texting first, checking in, proving you care, but the truth is, every time you do that, you teach her she doesn't have to miss you at all. Right now, you're stuck wondering why she pulled away, why the energy changed, why effort stopped working. Here's the flip most men never see. A woman doesn't miss consistency without strength. She misses the man who had the discipline to step back, stay calm, and keep moving forward when attention disappeared. The moment you stop chasing reassurance and start choosing your own direction, her curiosity replaces her comfort. You don't make a woman miss you by chasing her. You don't do it by explaining yourself, by sending long messages, by trying to prove your worth when she's already decided to look away. That's the first lie you were sold. You think effort creates longing, but effort without direction creates exhaustion, and exhaustion kills attraction. Here's the truth most men never accept. A woman doesn't miss what begs to stay. She misses what had the strength to walk away without resentment. She misses the version of you that didn't need her validation to stand tall. Because absence alone isn't powerful. Absence with self-respect is. Think about the moment she started pulling back. The why chasing kills attraction texts got shorter. The tone changed. The warmth faded, and instead of slowing down, you leaned in harder. You asked what was wrong. You tried to fix it. You tried to talk it out. You tried to save something that wasn't asking to be saved. In that moment, you taught her something about you. You taught her that your center wasn't solid, that your peace depended on her mood. And once a woman feels that, something inside her relaxes in the wrong way. The tension disappears, the polarity fades. What makes a woman miss you is not your words. It's the way you moved when things weren't certain. It's the way you didn't collapse when attention disappeared. It's the way you didn't punish her, chase her, or try to negotiate attraction. You simply adjusted your presence calmly, quietly, with dignity. When you stop over-explaining, something shifts. When you stop reacting emotionally to every change in her energy, something changes. When you stop making her the center of your world and return to your own mission, your own standards, your own rhythm, she feels the difference, even if she can't explain it. Most men think making a woman miss you is about disappearing dramatically, blocking her, posting pictures to provoke jealousy, acting cold and distant. That's not power. That's insecurity wearing a costume. Real absence doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to be seen. It's felt. You make a woman miss you when your presence was peaceful, not chaotic, when being around you felt grounded, not pressured, when you didn't need constant reassurance, when you weren't always available to soothe her emotions, when you didn't demand certainty in moments that required patience. A woman misses the man who made her feel calm in the mistake that makes her emotionally detached body, the man whose energy slowed her down instead of speeding her up, the man who didn't chase her moods but stayed steady regardless of them. That steadiness is rare, and rarity creates value. When you walk away without bitterness, without speeches, without trying to control the outcome, you leave behind a question. And questions are powerful because now her mind fills the silence, not with your explanations, but with her own thoughts. She wonders why you didn't fight harder. She wonders why you didn't beg. She wonders why you seem okay, and that curiosity becomes the seed of missing you. You don't make her miss you by reminding her of your value. You let her feel the absence of it, and that absence only works if you actually shift inward, if you actually rebuild your life instead of pretending to, if you stop checking her social media, if you stop replaying conversations, if you stop waiting for a message that may never come. Because the moment your energy moves forward, something pulls at her subconsciously. Women are deeply intuitive. They sense when a man is stuck. They sense when a man is moving. And movement is magnetic. The man who makes a woman miss him is not the man who disappears to manipulate. It's the man who reclaims his direction, who tightens his discipline, who becomes more focused, not more bitter, more grounded, not more guarded. When you stop needing her to come back, you become the version of yourself she remembers. And often that's when she starts feeling the absence the strongest, because now you're no longer emotionally available on demand. Not because you're playing games, but because your life is full. Your days are structured. Your mind is quiet, your self-respect is intact. She remembers how you used to listen without fixing, how you used to lead without forcing, how you used to silence versus absence. Not the same thing stay composed when things got emotional and now that energy is gone. Not replaced by anger, not replaced by distance, just gone. And the mind hates unresolved endings. You don't need to convince her of anything. You don't need closure speeches. You don't need to explain how much you cared. The man who truly leaves an imprint is the one who didn't need to explain his worth. If she reaches out, you don't rush. You don't interrogate. You don't unload emotion. You stay present, calm, curious, and contained. You don't punish her for leaving. You don't reward her for returning. You simply meet her where she is without abandoning yourself. That's what makes a woman miss you badly. Not intensity, not drama, not obsession, but composure. The version of you that didn't need her to feel whole. The version of you that chose himself without making it a statement. The version of you that walked away with his head high and his emotions regulated. Because deep down, what she misses isn't you chasing her. She misses the way she felt when she was with a man who knew who he was, where he was going, and didn't lose himself trying to keep her there. And when that memory settles in her chest, it doesn't come as fireworks. It comes quietly in moments she didn't expect. When something reminds her of your voice, when she notices the absence of your calm where chaos used to live, when she realizes no one else made things feel as simple as they did with you. That's when missing you begins to deepen, because now she's not reacting to your presence. She's reacting to its absence. And absence reveals truth faster than any conversation ever could. You see, most men confuse attachment with impact. They think being constantly available, constantly reassuring, constantly trying is what leaves a mark. But impact comes from contrast, from knowing what it felt like to have you there and feeling the difference when you're gone. And that difference only exists if you were grounded to begin with. If your value came from effort alone, she forgets you quickly. Effort is replaceable, but presence, emotional steadiness, masculine calm, those are felt in the nervous system, and the what she feels when you stop explaining yourself, nervous system remembers. When you stop trying to control how she feels about you, you give her space to actually feel. When you stop trying to manage the story, you allow silence to speak, and silence, when backed by self-respect, speaks loudly. This is where most men break. This is where they reach out one more time, one more message, one more explanation, one more emotional release, not because it's right, but because discomfort feels unbearable, and in doing so, they erase the very thing that could have made her miss them. Strength isn't loud. Strength doesn't argue with reality. Strength adapts and redirects. You don't make a woman miss you by staying emotionally available when she's unsure. You make her miss you by becoming unavailable to chaos, by choosing peace over proof, by choosing discipline over impulse. When you rebuild yourself, you stop talking about growth and you start embodying it. Your posture changes. Your eyes slow down. Your reactions soften. You no longer seek certainty from someone who couldn't give it to you before, and that energy travels farther than words ever could. She feels it when you no longer orbit her. She feels it when you don't rush to respond. She feels it when you don't ask where you stand. She feels it when your tone stays steady regardless of hers. Not cold, not distant, just centered. That centeredness forces reflection, because now she has to sit with her own emotions. There's no you to absorb them, no you to stabilize the moment. And in that space, she remembers how you used to do it without trying. She remembers the safety, the ease, the masculine containment that didn't need to dominate or impress. And that memory grows stronger the longer you stay aligned with yourself. You don't need to disappear from the world. You disappear from the need to be chosen, from the need to be validated, from the need to be understood by someone who already had access to you. When you release that need, you stop leaking energy, and what doesn't leak becomes powerful. That's why the man who truly makes a woman miss him doesn't sit around hoping. He builds, he trains, he sharpens his mind, he expands his life. Not to show her, not to win her back, how emotional memory really works, but because that's who he is when he's not abandoning himself. And if she comes back into your orbit, she doesn't meet the man she left. She meets the man who didn't collapse when she walked away, the man who didn't harden his heart or beg for closure, the man who stayed open but unavailable to anything that compromised his self-respect. That version of you doesn't need tactics. He doesn't need strategies. His presence alone creates contrast because he no longer reaches for what isn't reaching back. He no longer confuses desire with direction. He no longer negotiates his worth. And that's when missing you stops being a thought and becomes a feeling, a quiet pull, a sense of loss she can't fully name. Not because you tried to create it, but because you finally stopped trying to prevent it. And in that space where you no longer chase the outcome, something even deeper begins to happen inside you. The anxiety that once lived in your chest starts to quiet, your thoughts stop looping. Your body no longer braces for a notification that may never come. You begin to sleep differently, walk differently, speak differently, and whether she knows it consciously or not, that shift changes the entire emotional equation because now you are no longer trying to be remembered. You are no longer trying to be chosen. You are simply becoming harder to replace. A woman doesn't miss a man because he was perfect. She misses him because he was consistent in who he was, because he didn't fracture under pressure, because he didn't shapeshift to be liked, because he stayed himself even when it would have been easier to beg, bargain, or blame. That kind of integrity leaves a mark. When you stop performing for her attention, you stop training her nervous system to take you for granted. When you stop rescuing every emotional dip, you allow her to feel the weight of your absence fully, and that weight isn't heavy because you left. It's heavy because of how you left. No slam doors, no dramatic exits, no wounded speeches, just a quiet withdrawal of energy, a clean step back into your own life. And the mind hates clean endings without emotional mess. It keeps revisiting them, replaying moments, reinterpreting memories, the power of calm masculinity, wondering if something valuable slipped away unnoticed. That's why the man who makes a woman miss him badly is often the one who didn't try to make her miss him at all. He focused on alignment, not attachment, on direction, not reaction. You stop asking why she changed. You stop analyzing her behavior. You stop trying to decode signals. And in doing so, you regain authority over your inner world. You no longer need answers to move forward. That forward movement is felt. She may sense it in the way conversations no longer linger, in the way you don't circle back, in the way you don't reopen old emotional doors, not because you're closed off, but because you respect your time and energy now. And respect is contagious. A woman may forget compliments, she may forget promises, but she doesn't forget how she felt around a man who didn't lose himself, especially if she's used to men unraveling when things become uncertain. Your restraint becomes the loudest statement you never make. You don't explain why you're stepping back. You don't frame it as a lesson. You don't turn it into a performance of strength. You simply live differently, and that difference becomes undeniable. She might test the waters, a message, a reaction, a subtle reach, and in that moment, everything depends on who you've become, not what you say. If you respond from calm, not hunger, from curiosity, not urgency, from self-respect, not fear, the dynamic shifts again. Because now she's engaging with a man who doesn't need her to stabilize his emotions, a man who isn't trying to pull certainty from uncertainty, a man who can enjoy connection without clinging to it, and that's rare. Rarity creates tension. Tension creates desire. Desire, when left unresolved, turns into missing. You don't rush intimacy. You don't fast forward trust. You don't try to reclaim the past. You stay present. You let why she starts thinking about you at night. Things unfold at a pace that matches your standards. And if it doesn't align, you don't force alignment. You walk. That willingness to walk is felt long before it's tested, Because deep down, what makes a woman miss a man isn't the fear of losing him. It's the realization that he was never afraid to lose what wasn't aligned, that he valued himself enough to choose peace over attachment. And once she senses that, once she feels that grounded absence, the missing becomes less about regret and more about recognition. Recognition of what it felt like to be with a man who didn't need to be held together by her attention. Recognition of the safety she didn't know how to name at the time. You don't need to chase that recognition. You don't need to demand it. You simply continue moving in the direction that required no permission in the first place. And as you keep moving, something subtle but powerful takes shape. You stop defining yourself by who stayed or who left. Your identity no longer bends around someone else's uncertainty. You become rooted in your own choices, your own routines, your own values. That rootedness is what most people never develop. And it's what makes your absence impossible to ignore. Because when a man is truly grounded, his energy doesn't disappear when he leaves a room. It lingers, it echoes, it shows up in contrast to everything that comes after him. She notices it when conversations with others feel louder but emptier, when attention is offered freely but feels unstable, when attraction is there but safety is not. And she may not consciously connect it to you at first. She just knows something is missing. Something familiar, something steady. That's when memory starts to sharpen. Not the arguments, not the tension, but the moments of ease, the moments where she didn't feel rushed or judged, the moments where she could simply be because you were being. And the more you stay committed to your own life, the less accessible those moments become, not because you're withholding them, but becoming unforgettable without effort, because they were a product of who you were then, and who you've become now requires more alignment. This is where the power deepens. You no longer fantasize about how she'll feel when she misses you. You're too engaged in your own direction to monitor the emotional weather behind you. And that non-attachment is what sharpens her awareness, because she can feel that you're not waiting, you're not paused, you're not holding space for a version of her that didn't choose you. And nothing triggers reflection like realizing someone moved on without hardening. You didn't turn cold, you didn't turn cruel, you didn't turn bitter, you simply turned inward, then forward. And that's confusing to someone who expected guilt, anger, or pursuit. Confusion leads to curiosity, curiosity leads to reflection, reflection leads to missing, not because you engineered it, but because you refuse to abandon yourself to avoid it. When you live this way, you stop reacting to timelines, you stop measuring progress by messages, you stop tying your worth to outcomes, and that internal freedom changes the way you show up everywhere else, in your work, in your body, in your presence with others. People feel it, not just her, but if she crosses your mind at all, it's not with longing, it's with clarity. You see the dynamic for what it was, you see where you gave too much. Final truth, every man must hear where you stayed too long, where you ignored your own signals, and instead of blaming, you integrate the lesson. Integration is attractive. It's what separates a man who repeats patterns from a man who evolves. If she ever senses that evolution, if she ever comes close enough to feel it again, she won't be meeting a man who needs her to fill a void. She'll be meeting a man who has already filled his own life with purpose, structure, and peace. And that's intimidating in the best way, because now connection with you isn't guaranteed. It's earned through alignment, through mutual presence, through respect that moves both ways. You don't announce these standards, you live them. You don't demand change, you respond to behavior. You don't cling to potential, you choose reality. That choice is felt long after you make it. And the irony is, the more you embody this, the less you care whether she misses you at all. Because your life no longer depends on being remembered. It depends on being lived fully, deliberately, and without apology. That's when missing you becomes inevitable. Not because you tried to create a void, but because you stopped filling spaces that were never meant to hold.